Daniel had never imagined he would travel so far from Earth. The mission to Varial had come suddenly, a chance to witness alien diplomacy firsthand. As a human warrior, he was trained for battle, but this trip required a different kind of skill: patience, respect, and careful observation. His mission was simple: attend the wedding of two alien clans and keep the peace if needed. It sounded easy, but Daniel knew alien societies were complicated and appearances could be deceiving. The sky above Varial was a strange shade of violet, streaked with orange clouds. Daniel's shuttle descended slowly toward the royal city, a place filled with towers that seemed to float in mid-air. The streets below shimmered with light, and alien citizens moved with grace, their long limbs and colorful skins unlike anything Daniel had seen before. Some turned to look at him, whispering in a language he could not understand. He felt their curiosity and a faint undercurrent of amusement. Humans were rare here, and the idea of one walking freely among them was almost shocking. When Daniel stepped out of the shuttle, the ground seemed softer than he expected. His boots made only a faint impression, leaving small dimples that quickly faded. A servant approached him, their skin a deep green, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. The servant spoke in a melodic voice, greeting him in perfect English. "Welcome, honored guest," they said. "The king awaits your presence." Daniel nodded politely. He had spent hours learning the proper customs, and he did not want to make a mistake. He followed the servant through the twisting streets, past towers with transparent walls and gardens that floated in mid-air. He noticed children playing with small hovering toys, chasing them as they glided through the air. There was laughter, a sound strangely familiar even on this alien world. Despite their differences, Daniel felt a small sense of comfort. Finally, they reached the royal palace. The building was enormous, made of smooth, silvery metal that reflected the violet sky. Massive doors opened automatically as they approached, and Daniel stepped inside, careful to keep his movements respectful. The hall was filled with nobles, their eyes on him immediately. He could feel the weight of their stares, a mixture of curiosity, doubt, and something else he could not name. Whispers passed through the crowd, quick and light, like the brush of wings. Daniel kept his expression calm. He had faced tougher challenges than a room of skeptical aliens, and he knew that appearances mattered more here than on a battlefield. He walked slowly toward the main hall, bowing slightly when a few nobles came forward to greet him. Some bowed in return, others merely observed, their eyes calculating. He had to remind himself to breathe normally, to stay relaxed. At the far end of the hall stood the king and his family. The king's eldest daughter, Leora, watched Daniel carefully. She had heard that a human would attend the wedding, and she had expected someone clumsy or rude. Instead, she saw a man tall and strong, with calm eyes and a gentle posture. Something about him made her pause. She studied the way he moved, the way he carried himself. There was no arrogance, no desire to impress. Just a quiet strength she could not yet name. The ceremony began, and Daniel observed closely. Aliens moved with precision, their rituals complex and filled with meaning. He did not understand every gesture, but he respected them. At one point, he saw nobles exchanging small tokens, each adorned with jewels that seemed to glow faintly. The king performed a series of gestures that Daniel could tell were important. He watched without speaking, careful not to interfere. Despite his calm, Daniel noticed some nobles whispering about him. "Can a human truly understand our ways?" one asked. "He is here only because the king allowed it," said another. Some laughed quietly, their amusement clear. Daniel did not react. He had been laughed at before, and he knew that sometimes the best response was silence. Leora continued to watch him from a distance. She was not impressed by titles or clothes, only by the subtle things, a careful observation, a steady hand, a controlled expression. Daniel moved through the crowd with a quiet dignity that contrasted with the flamboyance of the alien nobles. She found herself curious, wondering what kind of human could remain so calm in the center of so much attention. As the day passed, Daniel saw more of the alien world. There were gardens where plants grew upside down, fountains that sprayed light instead of water, and birds that sang notes no human instrument could match. He walked carefully, taking it all in. At one point, a child approached him, curious and bold. Its eyes were wide and glowing faintly, and it reached out to touch his arm. Daniel knelt slightly and smiled. "Hello," he said softly. The child laughed and ran off. Leora, watching nearby, smiled faintly herself. Dinner was served later in the grand hall. The food was unfamiliar but edible, made from ingredients Daniel had never seen. He tried small bites of many dishes, careful not to offend the chefs or hosts. Across the table, Leora watched him, noting his patience and the way he tried each dish politely. She leaned slightly toward her companion, whispering a question he did not hear. During the feast, a few nobles attempted to provoke him. One spilled a drink near his plate, pretending it was an accident. Another made a pointed comment about human weakness. Daniel did not rise to the bait. He moved with calm efficiency, cleaning the spill and continuing his meal. The hall fell silent for a moment, a subtle recognition that the human was not easily shaken. Later, the king invited Daniel to walk with him in the palace gardens. The air was fragrant with strange blossoms, and small lights floated above them like fireflies. The king spoke of politics, of alliances, and of the delicate balance between the clans. Daniel listened carefully, responding with measured words when asked. The king seemed satisfied, nodding occasionally, and Leora followed at a distance, her curiosity growing. As night fell, the city outside shimmered under twin moons. Daniel stood on a balcony, looking down at the streets below. He thought about the humans back on Earth, about the battles he had fought, and the missions he had completed. Yet this felt different. Here, in a strange world, surrounded by beings he barely understood, he felt a challenge that was not about strength, but about respect, patience, and the courage to remain himself. A soft sound behind him made him turn. Leora stepped onto the balcony, quiet and graceful. "You have not made a single mistake today," she said, her voice calm but carrying an unspoken question. Daniel looked at her and smiled faintly. "I am only trying to learn," he replied, "and to respect your world." She considered this, studying his face. "You are different from what I expected," she said. "Most humans are loud or careless. You are steady." Daniel inclined his head politely. "I have learned that strength is not only measured in battle," he said. For a long moment they watched the city together in silence. Neither spoke, but a quiet understanding formed between them. Daniel had arrived as a guest, but he already felt a connection to this place, to the people, and to the daughter of the king. Leora, for her part, felt curiosity turning into something more, a question of what this human might truly be capable of, beyond what anyone had imagined. As the night deepened, the palace lights dimmed and guests began to depart from the gardens. Daniel returned to his quarters, thoughtful but calm. He knew the coming days would test him in ways he could not yet see. Alien rituals, political disputes, and perhaps even challenges to the king's authority could arise at any time. But for the first time in his life, Daniel felt that he had arrived exactly where he was supposed to be, not by chance, but by purpose. In the quiet of his room, he prepared for sleep, thinking of the contest of patience and observation that tomorrow might bring. Across the palace, Leora remained awake, thinking of the human who moved among her people with quiet dignity. She wondered if the stories about humans were wrong. Perhaps, she thought, they were stronger than anyone could imagine. Daniel's first day on Varial ended not with triumph or violence, but with understanding. He had observed, respected, and connected in ways that mattered far more than any sword could measure. And in the shadows of the palace, the human warrior and the alien princess each sensed that the world around them was about to change, though neither could yet know how profoundly. The stars outside shimmered in silent witness, and the two watched them, separated by distance, but drawn by an unspoken bond. In that moment, the seeds of what was to come had already been planted. Daniel had arrived as a guest, but he was destined to become much more. The next morning, Daniel woke early. The violet sky of Varial glowed with soft light as he prepared himself for the day. Today was not only about observing the wedding rituals, it would also bring tests he could not yet foresee. He dressed simply, his ceremonial outfit plain but functional, and walked carefully through the palace corridors. Servants and nobles passed by, some bowing slightly, others just staring. Daniel ignored them, keeping his focus steady. The main hall was already busy when he arrived. Aliens from many clans had gathered, and the air was thick with chatter. Daniel noticed that tension moved beneath the surface. While the wedding was a celebration, old rivalries were never far from the minds of the guests. As he stepped further in, whispers followed him. "Why does the human attend the ceremony?" asked one voice. Another replied, "Perhaps the king believes he is strong, but that is doubtful." Daniel did not respond. He had learned long ago that words meant nothing without action. Leora appeared at the far end of the hall. She smiled faintly, acknowledging him, but her eyes were serious. Daniel returned the gesture, understanding that they were both aware of the subtle politics surrounding the day. Guests moved in carefully choreographed patterns, presenting gifts and performing small rituals that Daniel studied with interest. He did not pretend to understand them all, but he observed each gesture and the reactions it produced. In this world, even small mistakes could have consequences. During the afternoon, a sudden commotion arose. One of the rival clans had challenged the king. It was a ritual meant to prove honor and strength, but it carried real danger. Daniel could see the panic in the king's advisors. Normally, the king's personal guard would respond, but a few were injured from training the day before. The challengers moved forward, their tall, muscular forms imposing. Daniel felt the tension in the hall tighten like a spring. He knew what would happen if the king's guard failed. The ceremony could turn violent, and years of fragile alliances could collapse in moments. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I will accept the challenge," he said. The hall fell silent. Some guests blinked, not understanding. Others whispered, "A human? How can he possibly compete?" Leora's eyes widened slightly. She had expected someone to respond, but never thought it would be the human warrior himself. Daniel moved toward the center of the hall. He did not raise his voice or threaten anyone. He simply stood and waited, ready to act if needed. The alien challenger stepped forward, a massive figure covered in ceremonial armor, his skin shimmering with strange patterns. He looked down at Daniel, his expression a mixture of surprise and amusement. "You are brave," the challenger said, his voice deep and rolling. "But do you truly believe a human can stand against me?" Daniel nodded slowly. "I believe in fairness and honor. That is enough for me." The hall buzzed with excitement. No human had ever participated in this ritual before. Many nobles laughed quietly, certain the outcome would be a humiliation for Daniel. Yet he remained calm, moving carefully into the designated area. He observed the patterns of the hall, the space he would need, and the challenge he would face. His eyes were steady, his posture relaxed. He was ready. The ritual began. Unlike battles on Earth, this contest was not only about strength. It tested strategy, timing, and patience. The challenger moved first, lunging with surprising speed. Daniel dodged smoothly, his movements precise. The hall gasped. He did not strike wildly or attempt brute force. Instead, he studied his opponent, noticing gaps and weaknesses. Each step was deliberate, each action calculated. The crowd's laughter slowly faded. Nobles began whispering to one another in amazement. This human moved with a skill they had not expected. Leora's attention was fixed on him, her curiosity turning to admiration. He was quiet, focused, and utterly in control. Even the king's advisors watched with growing respect, realizing that Daniel might succeed where others could not. Minutes passed, and the challenge continued. The alien warrior grew frustrated. His attacks became faster, more aggressive. Daniel adapted calmly, avoiding injury while keeping the opponent off balance. He did not strike until the right moment, waiting for the challenger to make a mistake. The hall was silent now, the energy tense with anticipation. Finally, the opportunity came. The challenger overextended, and Daniel moved with careful precision. A small, controlled strike disrupted the opponent's balance, and the massive alien fell to one knee. Silence filled the hall. For the first time, the human had proven himself in front of so many aliens. Daniel did not celebrate or boast. He simply stepped back, his expression calm, allowing the outcome to speak for itself. The king rose, his face serious but respectful. "This human warrior has shown honor, skill, and wisdom," he said. "He has upheld the spirit of our traditions. Let it be known that his presence here is not without merit." A murmur of surprise passed through the crowd. Even the rival clan, once confident of their victory, bowed slightly in acknowledgement. Leora moved closer, her eyes shining. She had witnessed not only his skill, but also his calmness and fairness. "You did not need to prove yourself with violence," she said softly, stepping beside him. "Yet you chose to act with honor. That is rare." Daniel nodded. "Sometimes action is required to maintain peace. I only wish to help, not to dominate." The rest of the day passed with a new energy in the hall. Nobles who had whispered and doubted him now regarded him with interest and respect. Children approached him cautiously, curious but unafraid. Daniel answered their questions patiently, demonstrating humility alongside his strength. Leora watched, noting the quiet way he drew people to him without trying. She had never seen anyone like him, and she felt a growing sense of connection. During the evening, the king invited Daniel to walk in the palace gardens again. The twin moons reflected softly on the floating streams, and the air was filled with the scent of alien flowers. The king spoke of the alliances between clans, of how fragile trust could be, and of the importance of honor in maintaining peace. Daniel listened carefully, responding thoughtfully when asked. The king nodded several times, clearly satisfied with his insight. "You have done more than I expected," the king said quietly. "You are not just a guest. You have shown skill and restraint. That is rare among humans." Daniel bowed slightly. "I only try to do what is right. I have learned that respect and patience are as important as strength." As they walked, Leora joined them. She looked at Daniel with curiosity and warmth. "You did not only win," she said. "You did so without harming anyone unnecessarily. That is impressive." Daniel smiled faintly. "I have seen enough battles to know that honor matters more than victory." The king paused, looking at both of them. There was a long silence before he spoke. "Perhaps your presence here will remind us all that courage comes in many forms," he said, "and that sometimes the smallest gesture can have the greatest impact." Leora looked at Daniel, her expression thoughtful. I think you understand more than most of my people," she said softly. Later, as Daniel returned to his quarters, he thought about the day. He had arrived as a guest, unsure of how he would be received. Yet through patience, careful observation, and calm courage, he had turned doubt into respect. He realized that this was only the beginning. The days ahead would bring further challenges, some subtle, some dangerous. But he now knew that he could face them, not only with strength, but with wisdom and honor. As he prepared for sleep, Daniel thought of Leora and the quiet understanding that had begun between them. He felt a small warmth in his chest, a feeling he had rarely experienced. Perhaps this mission was more than diplomacy. Perhaps it was a chance to show that humans, though few and far from home, could be more than legends. They could be true allies, capable of bravery, honor, and quiet strength. Outside, the palace lights dimmed, and the city of Varial shimmered under the moons. Daniel's thoughts were calm, but his mind was alert. He knew that tomorrow would bring new tests, perhaps more dangerous, perhaps more delicate. Yet he felt ready. He had proven himself once, and he was determined to continue doing so. Leora, meanwhile, stood by a balcony in her chambers, thinking of the human warrior who had stood unshaken in the center of her people. She felt something stirring inside her, a mix of curiosity, admiration, and an unspoken question. Who was he really, and how far could his courage reach? She did not yet know the answer, but she was certain she wanted to find out. Daniel fell asleep thinking of the stars above, and of the strange new world he was beginning to understand. For the first time, he felt that being a human did not make him weak in the eyes of the universe. On Varial, he had a chance to show the truth, quietly, steadily, with honor. The morning sun cast soft violet light across the city of Varial. Daniel walked through the palace corridors, his steps calm and deliberate. After yesterday's challenge, the halls were no longer filled with doubt and whispers. Instead, there was quiet respect. Nobles who had once sneered at the human now nodded as he passed, some even offering polite greetings. Daniel acknowledged them with slight bows, careful not to show pride. He knew that respect earned through action could fade if not maintained. Leora was waiting for him in the garden. She had chosen to spend the morning among the floating flowers and gentle streams, her curiosity about the human growing stronger by the hour. As Daniel approached, she smiled. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm but warm. "You slept well?" Daniel returned the smile. "As well as I could. And you?" "Yes," she said. "Though I spent some time thinking about yesterday. You surprised everyone." Daniel shrugged lightly. "I only acted as I thought right. I did not come to impress anyone." Leora studied him, noting his humility. "Most of my people would have boasted loudly," she said. "But you do not." Daniel looked at the floating flowers. "Boasting does not make peace. Only action and understanding can do that." Leora nodded slowly, impressed. They walked together through the gardens, moving past streams that glowed faintly in the morning light. Daniel noticed small birds perched on floating branches, their songs soft and unfamiliar. He watched Leora as she observed the flowers, and he realized how quiet her presence was. She was not loud or demanding. She simply noticed things and understood them. Daniel felt a strange connection forming, one that required no words, only attention and care. As the day progressed, Daniel was invited to attend meetings with the king and his advisors. He listened carefully as they discussed the challenges facing Varial, trade disputes, old rivalries, and the pressure to maintain peace between clans. Daniel offered simple, thoughtful suggestions when asked, never speaking over anyone but always making his point clearly. The king nodded several times, clearly valuing his insight. Leora watched from a distance, her admiration growing. She noticed the way Daniel considered every word before speaking, the way he did not rush to judgment, and the calm in his eyes even when conversations grew tense. She had not expected a human to possess such patience and intelligence. Most of her people considered humans weak and unpredictable, but Daniel was proving them wrong, quietly but decisively. During the afternoon, a small group of nobles approached Daniel. They wanted to test him, to see if his calm yesterday had been a fluke. One of them, a tall alien with silver eyes, challenged him to a series of small contests of skill, balance, reflex, and coordination. Daniel agreed, knowing that these tests were part of the politics of the court. He did not need to prove strength, only competence and calm under pressure. The contest began. The silver-eyed noble moved first, performing each task with confidence. Daniel followed, moving carefully and deliberately, observing each detail. When it came time to complete the balance challenge, Daniel adjusted his weight precisely, matching the alien's movements. The hall murmured in surprise. Though the humans were often considered weak, Daniel's skill was undeniable. As they continued, Daniel's calm and focus won the respect of the crowd. He did not boast or gloat, only completing each task with quiet precision. Leora, watching closely, felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "You are unlike any human I have heard of," she whispered to a companion nearby. "There is more to him than I imagined." The companion nodded but said nothing, recognizing the truth in her words. Later, Daniel and Leora walked along a narrow bridge over a glowing stream. The water reflected the twin moons, casting soft light around them. "Do you ever feel out of place here?" Leora asked, her voice soft. Daniel thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I try to learn and understand. If I respect the world I am in, I can belong here, even if it is different from home." Leora smiled faintly. "You do not only adapt, you also make people notice what is right." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden shout from the palace hall. A dispute had broken out between two noble families over a minor issue, but tensions were rising quickly. Daniel moved immediately, walking calmly into the hall. He observed the argument, noting the gestures, the tone, and the expressions of each party. Instead of taking sides, he spoke clearly and simply. "Calm yourselves," he said. "No one benefits from conflict. There is a solution that honors both of you." The nobles hesitated. Humans were not known for diplomacy here, and Daniel's words carried unexpected weight. He suggested a compromise, simple and fair, that allowed both parties to save face. Slowly, the tension eased, and the nobles nodded. The hall's atmosphere shifted from hostility to respect. Leora watched quietly, impressed by his ability to influence the room without force or arrogance. After the dispute ended, the king called Daniel to speak privately. "You have done more than I expected," the king said. "Not only did you uphold the ritual yesterday, but today you have shown understanding and wisdom. Few outsiders could achieve this." Daniel bowed slightly. "I am honored to serve your court. I only wish to act rightly." The king smiled faintly. "You are different from any human I have known. Perhaps there is more to your species than legend suggests." Later in the evening, Daniel returned to the gardens. Leora was there again, waiting beside a stream that glowed softly. "You have earned respect," she said, her eyes studying him closely. "But more than that, you have earned curiosity. People are watching you differently now. Even I am unsure what to expect from you next." Daniel smiled. "I do not seek to surprise anyone. I only act as I must. If that changes how people see me, it is a consequence, not a goal." Leora laughed softly. "That is rare. Most of my people act for appearances, not truth. You do the opposite, and yet it changes everything." Daniel felt a strange warmth in his chest, a feeling he did not yet understand. He had faced many battles, but this quiet acknowledgement, this respect from someone so powerful, felt different. Over the next few days, Daniel and Leora spent more time together. They walked in the gardens, discussed the cultures of their worlds, and shared stories of their past. Leora told Daniel about her childhood on Virial, about the pressures to act as a princess and the expectations placed upon her. Daniel listened, sharing simple tales of life on Earth, of small victories and failures, and of lessons learned from battle and survival. Through their conversations, a bond began to form. It was not sudden, nor was it loud. It was quiet, steady, built on trust, respect, and mutual curiosity. Daniel admired Leora's intelligence and compassion, while she admired his humility and strength. Each began to notice small things about the other. The way Daniel's eyes softened when he spoke to children. The way Leora's hands moved when she described a memory. One evening, as they sat beside a small floating fountain, Leora spoke softly. "Do you ever feel alone, even among friends?" she asked. Daniel considered this. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I have learned that being true to oneself allows connection. Even in a strange world, one can belong if one acts with honesty and care." Leora nodded. "You speak wisely. Most of my people do not think this way." Their time together was not unnoticed. The court began to watch them carefully, observing the unusual attention between a human and the princess. Whispers passed through the halls, but Daniel ignored them. He did not seek attention. He only sought to act rightly and maintain peace. Leora, too, paid little heed to gossip. She was drawn to the human for reasons she could not yet explain, feeling that he was unlike anyone she had ever met. As the days passed, small challenges arose. Some nobles tried to provoke Daniel, testing his patience and his skill. Others questioned Leora's judgment, wondering why she spent time with a human. Daniel faced each situation with quiet control. He did not act out of pride or anger, only with calm observation and measured action. His reputation grew quietly but firmly. One afternoon, a minor threat appeared from a rival faction. A small group of outsiders attempted to disrupt a ceremony, and Daniel acted immediately. He moved with precision, intercepting them before any harm could occur. Leora watched, her admiration deepening. "You act without fear," she said later, "but also without recklessness. That is rare." Daniel smiled faintly. "I have learned that courage without control is dangerous. Balance is key." By the end of Part 3, Daniel and Leora had grown close in ways both subtle and profound. The court had begun to respect him, the king had acknowledged his wisdom, and Leora had begun to see him as more than a guest. A quiet connection had formed, one built on trust, curiosity, and mutual respect. And though neither of them yet spoke the words aloud, both sensed that this bond would shape the future, not only for themselves, but for the people of Varial. In the quiet of the palace that night, Daniel looked out over the glowing city. He thought of the challenges that had already come, and of those he knew were yet to arrive. He felt ready, not only to face trials of skill or battle, but to navigate the delicate webs of trust, loyalty, and honor that defined this world. Beside him, Leora watched the same stars, wondering how a human could inspire such change in a world that had always seemed so distant and untouchable. For both of them, the days ahead promised uncertainty, but also opportunity. Daniel had proven that humans could act with courage, intelligence, and honor. Leora had discovered a depth in the human warrior she had never expected. Together they were beginning a story that neither fully understood yet, but one that would shape the future of Varial in ways that could not yet be imagined.